Spider-Man Far From Home is out in theaters, and the movie has a massive impact on the future of the MCU. I want to go over all the big changes this movie sets up, including its ending and the 2 post-credit scenes. Today's shout-out goes to horror historian. Love that name, by the way. Indeed, Scarlett Johansson was pregnant during the shooting of Age of Ultron. We'll do another nerd card question at the end of this video. What's up, everybody? I'm Josh. Welcome back to the Den. And real quick, show notes. Sorry about no show yesterday. I will tell you the story of the cat at the end of this video. And we are doing our first Patreon exclusive live stream later tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be taking questions from people and talking about sort of the future, much of the big changes that are coming to the Den of Nerds in the next couple of months. Go check out the Patreon if you're interested in being a part of that live stream later tonight. All right, let's start off with a good old-fashioned spoiler warning. If you have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, get on out of here. Spider-Man Far From Home sets up a lot of stuff for the future of the MCU and informs us a lot about what the current state of the Marvel Universe is. But yeah, spoiler warning, come back later, because this is gonna be a good video, like, I got a feeling. All right, first let's talk about the blip. This is the word in Marvel canon that refers to the phenomenon of all of the people that were snapped away coming back. Now, this is really cool, and it's referred to a lot in the film, like the blip beard that Happy has and, you know, blip children. At one point, Flash Thompson is ordering a drink on the airplane because technically, via his birth date, it's been 21 years or more since he's been alive. And MJ's like, oh, actually, he blipped, so he's not actually 21, he's 16. There's also support for people that are displaced because of the blip. This is what Aunt May is doing for the fundraiser at the beginning of the movie, where, of course, Spider-Man is helping her out. Pepper Potts makes the big donation, but we can assume this is happening all over the world. People are dealing with the blip just like they were dealing with the snap or the event. And this is something we were really curious about, like how this was going to play out in the MCU after Endgame. Bottom line, the world is dealing with this, and not always in the best way, but it's definitely a thing. Now, another thing is that the world seems kind of fixed up, right? I mean, like, besides a lot of the damage that we see from the elementals in the movie, most of the places in Europe seem kind of well kept, and things seem to be back on track. And when you come back into New York, there's a lot of construction being done around the city while Peter's swinging around, and it looks like things are more or less back to normal or getting to be that way. Like, it's not really dystopian. The world seems to have found ways to deal with what happened. Now, before I get out of the blip, I just want to talk about this one particular scene where the band pops back up. They have the shot of them, you know, being dusted, and then they literally pop back up. This is a really crazy scene. It shows from people's perspectives what it was like to witness both of those events in more of a casual setting. And the snap is still horrifying to watch. Like, it's crazy how horrifying they made that look. I love it. But the real point is these people just come back where they last were. And so we had a lot of questions about what exactly happened when people came back, and the blip seems to take people right back to where they were, which sucks because a lot of people were maybe in submarines underwater and they just came back and drowned. And maybe there was a bunch of people in the air flying around, and then they were just in the middle of the air and there's no airplane anymore and they fall and die. Now, you can make the argument that, like, both the submarine and the airplane were very similar to the tubas or the cell phones or all the different things that came back that people were holding. And, like, maybe, but we do see planes and different things crashing at the end of Infinity War while the happening or the snap is going on. Just something to think about. Like, maybe a lot of people died during the blip. All right, now let's talk about the fear and the paranoia about another alien invasion and just the fear that the Avengers are gone. I mean, the world is clearly missing the Avengers. This is a point that's brought up several times during the movie. The world is also afraid of what will happen with the next threat. I mean, just take, for instance, the very first time that Spider-Man is being interviewed. He has all those post-traumatic stress moments. People are asking him if he's going to be the new Iron Man. Is he the last remaining Avenger? What is he going to do if aliens come back? And Peter's just overwhelmed. It's a really cool scene, but I think it perfectly illustrates the state of the world. And there's a lot of other things to sort of fill this in, but yeah, basically, guys, the Avengers are gone. Nobody knows for sure if there even are Avengers anymore, and we're really afraid of what could possibly happen. Another big threat like that, you know what I mean? Also important to note that Nick Fury is putting together a team, and you might say, well, we know that that's not Nick Fury, that's actually Talos. But either way, he's working with Nick Fury. He's like an extension of Nick Fury in this movie, and so Nick Fury is still trying to put together a team. That's why he recruits Mysterio, that's why he recruits Spider-Man, and that's why he planned on taking both of them to that crazy meeting that he was going to have. But basically, Nick Fury is trying to rebuild a team of heroes. And even though it's Talos that says, hey, I used to know everything, now I know nothing, and I'm trying to put a team together, even though that's Talos saying that, again, he's an extension of Nick Fury at this point. We have to assume that that is sort of how Nick Fury feels about the situation as well. Also important to note, Mysterio talks about how the world will accept anything now. I mean, particularly in that scene where they're explaining that they had a writer talk about a Quentin Beck from a different universe and monsters coming in from a different world and how it's ridiculous, but the world will literally believe anything right now. And it seems to be really true. Like, people are terrified and just ready to believe crazy things. So the world is topsy-turvy, which to me sets up the perfect way for Dark Reign to actually happen. And Dark Reign, of course, is this area in time in Marvel Comics where Norman Osborn is put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. And he basically puts a bunch of villains in charge of it. There's a bunch of nefarious stuff going on. But to get there and to earn the trust of all these people, there was the invasion of the Skrulls, and Norman Osborn killed the Queen. The world was afraid. We didn't know what we would do if another alien invasion came down, and the one man who had seemingly thwarted the biggest threat from that invasion, yeah, we trusted him with everything, and he totally betrayed us. But we're getting something like that going on. Something like that is being set up by the very fact that the Avengers are not around and people are afraid. Now, when it comes to this big meeting, and forgive me because I really don't remember where it was going to take place, I believe somewhere in Europe, but it really seems like this was a meeting where the world would be sort of deciding what to do next, how to have a new group of Avengers or heroes, some kind of a team that could act as a unit to protect the Earth. And the evidence for this is that that's what Nick Fury was doing. He literally talks about that. He's trying to recruit and he's going to this big meeting. There's, you know, this big council being assembled. It's a big deal. Like, it's sort of right there, but you don't really like latch on to the significance of what that means. That could potentially lead us to Dark Reign, as I've said again, because what if Norman Osborn shows up to this meeting? What if Justin Hammer shows up to this meeting? What if a lot of people seemingly bad show up to this meeting and the world is so afraid of what could happen next and so helpless without the actual Avengers that a new team is formed, an international team of Avengers, which could become the Dark Avengers. So those are all the big crazy revelations and things that set up the future of the MCU that are in the actual movie. But let's talk about the post-credit scene. All right, the first post-credit scene is all about Mysterio revealing to the world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Also fraudulently paint a picture of Peter Parker and Spider-Man being totally evil. Having Peter Parker be a villain in the eyes of the state, if the state owns the Dark Avengers, is a great way to set up an eventual conflict. We have actual heroes that are looked at as villains to society fighting actual villains that are looked at as heroes by society. And that, my friends, is comic book magic. I also think this is a really cool way for them to bring in some of the drama that Peter has to deal with in the Civil War from the comic books. You see, in Civil War from the comics, Peter Parker comes out and, at the bequest of Tony Stark, reveals his identity to the world, which is a part of their version of the Sokovia Accords, which is the Hero Registration Act. It ends up being terrible for Peter and the people that he cares about. He learns a very valuable lesson, and then Doctor Strange wizards all that shit away. But yeah, this seems to be a cool way for them to explore some of those themes from that comic book run on the silver screen in the next couple of Spidey films or Avengers films. Now let's talk about the very last post-credit scene, the craziest thing in this whole dang movie, and that is the reveal that Nick Fury and Maria Hill on Earth are Skrulls. The thing that's really cool about this is it explains why Nick Fury in this movie got fooled by Mysterio, which comic book wise probably wouldn't happen. And the reveal of Nick Fury being on this weird space station dressed very casually and looking a bit heavier than the counterpart he has on Earth. Yeah, this scene is dope, and I think it has a huge implication for the future of the MCU. You see, this could be the start of SWORD or a similar organization, and my theory here right now is that the Maria Hill and the Nick Fury that were whisked away at the end of Infinity War were not actually the real Nick Fury and Maria Hill. Yeah, those were Skrulls, and the reason I think this is because the Nick Fury that we see in this post-credit scene for Spider-Man Far From Home, yeah, he's much bigger. Like, he literally looks a little bit fatter, looks like he's been in space for some time. He's just casually walking around and all these Skrull generals are off work, busy doing things. This station looks advanced as hell and big as hell. And so I think that Nick Fury could have been acting from this base in space and having Talos help him out and act as Nick Fury on Earth. Meaning, I don't think Nick Fury was snapped. I think he was around for the whole entire time of the blip. And what's also interesting is that opens up the door for him having some interactions with Captain Marvel during this time period? I mean, it just literally opens up a world of possibilities. My gut tells me he is forming some version of Sword out in space and has been for some time. And that could be where Captain Marvel had been during some of the events of Avengers Endgame. It could also be how Carol knew where the Benatar was. Perhaps Fury out there in space figured it out and sent her to go. And at the time, Fury could have told Captain Marvel, don't tell them I'm around, ask where I've been, and sort of play out the plan that he had previously had, which of course saw Talos being on Earth, controlling the Earthbound agenda, while the real Nick Fury was in space, controlling the cosmic agenda. So we just went over a lot. Let me know what you guys think about all of this and more. We should be doing a live stream relatively soon out there. I mean, we're gonna do the Patreon live stream tonight. I'm sure we'll get into some of this, but I wanna do a big fan chat live soon too, where we'll go over all these crazy things, maybe tomorrow sometime. But let me know your thoughts right now in the comment section below. And now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what did SWORD stand for in Marvel Comics? It's an acronym much like SHIELD. What did it stand for? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video. All right. The cat story. And actually, it's way crazier than my kitten knocked over my recording equipment, because I don't have a kitten. So the way it happened was Sunday morning, I came down into my studio. This is the studio I'm at in my current place. And the first thing I noticed is one of my lights is knocked down. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. Then I go over to get my laptop because I had to go to the day job that day, but I was bringing my computer because I was really just gonna edit Star Wars videos all day. But so yeah, I go to get my laptop. And when I go to get my laptop, there's a whole bunch of my equipment on the floor. Some of it like bashed, like looked like it was sort of violently ripped off of my table and just slammed onto my concrete floor. This is like my mixer, my wireless mic sort of hub thing. And I was like, what the hell? And so I hit my roommates up and I was like, guys, did somebody like drunkenly stumble through the basement last night and rip a bunch of my equipment off? Because some of my stuff got bashed. And they were all like, no, we haven't been down there. Nobody was over. We don't know what happened. So then Sunday night, really late at night, one of my roommates is on the couch just watching TV, and he looks over and there's this random cat sitting on the couch next to him. And he does a double take. He like looks at the random cat, then he looks at his cat who's just sitting there like everything's chill, and then he looks at the random cat again. And he's like, what the hell? So apparently this stray cat somehow gets into our house, is just chill with the cat that we already have. They're sharing food, probably pooping in the same litter box, doing whatever. And the stray cat must have come in through the basement and just torn all of my stuff apart. And so the mystery of how my equipment got messed up is that a stray cat must have gotten into our basement, ran around, tore a bunch of my stuff apart, busted up into the house. We didn't notice him for a full day. And yeah, that's the cat story. So yeah, really crazy. Sorry about no show yesterday. Had to go out and get a new mixer because of a stray cat.